everybody, welcome back to another video, and this time I wanted to take a really fun look at my top 5 favorite amp models in our Line 6 Helix, Line 6 HX Stomp, Line 6 Pod Go, and even Helix Native, as they all have the same amp models. You know, it's funny, there's so many amp models available that many of us, and I'm as guilty as anybody else, oftentimes maybe gravitate towards 1 or 2 amp models that we maybe have a preconceived idea about because of our use of those amps in the real world, or just because, I don't know, for whatever reason we choose a couple and we kind of stick to them. Nothing wrong with that, mind you, but boy, do we ever have a lot of possibilities in the Helix. And it's kind of, I know myself in doing the dialing in videos, many times I've picked an amp that I totally disregarded or just didn't have a chance to try. And when I did the dialing in video, I was super pleasantly surprised by just how amazing, you know, a certain amp model sounded. So I thought it might be fun to take a look at my top 5. But again, this is my top 5 sort of at this snapshot in time, because who knows, right? If I did this video again a year from now, forgetting what the 5 I chose in this video, I could very likely pick a different 5. There's so many great amp models. So this is by no means telling you that you should or shouldn't use these. It's just kind of, at the moment, having to pick 5, these are the ones that I would choose that I really like. So what I'm going to do with those amp models is place them into my template. And anybody who's watched my channel knows I have a custom tone template that I will show you in a moment. And that's my starting point for just about all my presets. And I tweak from there depending on what I want to do, what guitar I'm using, what my end goal is for the results I want. So I throw them in there, and I'm going to show you just kind of the stock cab, stock settings that come up, and then show maybe 1 or 2 tweaks of the cabs and microphones that I would use without really changing the settings. Maybe look at the gain range and whatnot of the amp models. But without further ado, let's go over to HX Edit, and we will take a look at my template first, and then we'll dive into my top 5 amps. So here we are in HX Edit, and here's my template that I've told you about already, and I've done videos on this. I have a little LA Studio comp just for a touch of compression at the end. An EQ if I want to EQ, the parametric EQ if I want to be a little more surgical or add a couple moves to this tone to shape it a little bit. I always sort of bake in a low cut of 100 hertz and a high cut of 12 kilohertz. Mind you, when we pull up the amp and cab, the cab also has an 80 hertz low cut and 8 kilohertz high cut. I kind of sometimes just leave them both on. It's really no different. It's a very subtle difference, if anything. I usually just have a little bit of room verb to start with, decay of 5, mix of 30%, a touch of transistor tape delay, set at a quarter note, feedback at 22%, mix of 26%. And the thing I really like to add in is the low and high shelf block, where I take all the frequencies below 650 hertz, drop them by 2 dB, and take all the frequencies above 650 hertz and add 2 dB to them. And that's a lot of times because I like ribbon mics, and I find that just kind of gives it the nice sort of finished polish. And I always kind of refer to these moves as kind of what a mastering engineer would do, right? Okay, so that's the template I'm going to drop in. The only reason is because that's what I use for almost all of my presets as a starting point. Seldom does it stay exactly like this, but it's a good starting point. We'll just see how that sounds with these models. So here we go, my top 5. So coming in at number 5 is the German Mahadeva model, which is a model of the Bogner Shiva amp. I have played Bogner amps in real life. A real good friend of mine has a Bogner Ecstasy amp, which is just an amazing amp. So I'm a big fan of their amps in real life, but the Line 6 folks have done a bang-up job of modeling the Bogner Shiva, which is called the German Mahadeva. And what they do is they pair it up with a Bogner cabinet, a 112 lead 80 cab, which they pair up with a 409 dynamic. Let's take a listen to how that sounds at these sort of stock settings. What I'll do is I'll give that a little boost up with the channel volume. That doesn't affect the tone at all, it just gives me more output. Okay, Okay, so the one thing I would do, I like that cabinet. I would leave that alone, but I would probably change it to maybe a 160 ribbon mic. Cleans up nicely with the volume knob. So real nice tones. I really wouldn't have to do a whole heck of a lot more to it than just that. But it also has a lot more gain on tap. If I come into the drive control and crank that to 10, so lots of gain on tap there. And again, I might mess around with the settings on this, obviously, if I was going to tweak it, but that's what that sounds like just out of the box like that. And I find it has kind of like a nice mid-forward sound to it. And it really depends on what guitar you're playing. I'm playing my Fender Elite Telly here, so if you had humbuckers, you might have to tweak things a little different, maybe move the microphone around a little bit more, pick a different microphone, whatever your end goal is. But that's one model that I really love in our Helix, the German Mahadeva, which is the Bogner Shiva. Number 4, the Interstate Z model. Now this is a model of the Dr. Z Route 66 amp. I used to actually be an endorsing artist of Dr. Z and got to know the guys very well. Really wonderful fellas, really wonderful company, and amazing amplifiers. I actually used to go out to, one time I went out to their Z Fest, they called it, and got to jam with some of the other attendees. Sometimes Brad Paisley goes out to that. I'm not sure if they still do it, but I did actually walk on stage. I got to plug into a Route 66 amp, no pedals whatsoever, cranked the thing up full, used my volume control, and it was just wonderful. So wonderful amps. So I really like the way that the Line 6 folks have modeled this amp as well. And this is going into a 212 Interstate cab, which is also a Dr. Z cab from what I understand. Now it comes up right away with a 421 dynamic. I have bumped the channel volume up just so we get a little bit of output here. And that's what this sounds like. Neck pickup. I love that cabinet. It's one of my favorite stock cabs in the Helix, but what I would probably do again is move that up to maybe a 160 ribbon mic. You'll notice it just warms the tone up a bit. I love the way this amp is clean but has a really beautiful breakup to it. I like the way it goes from clean into the edge of breakup. Especially on the bottom end. Go to the neck pickup on that. It's also got a little more gain on tap. Obviously not a very high gain amp, but if I crank the drive up on it, So beautiful the way that breaks up. That's my favorite part about that amp, and I really always have that one in the back of my mind when I need that style of tone. I really love it. So that's my number 4 favorite amp, is the Interstate Z, the Dr. Z Route 66 amp. At number 3, this one might surprise some folks, and this is one of those ones that I kind of discovered when I was doing my dialing in videos, and I was kind of running out of amps I had done already, and I picked the Line 6 Doom amp. And I just, maybe it was the name that turned me off. I thought, I'm not into, you know, don't need that style of a tone or whatever. But I found that this amp actually really had some nice qualities about it. I love the way I love the overdrive that we get from this amp, and I'm not exactly sure. I should have looked that up before I did the video, but what this was sort of modeled after, maybe a Boogie, maybe a Mesa Boogie, I'm not sure. Anyways, I'll check into that after, but whatever it is, they did a great job with it. So what they've done with this is they've got the Line 6 Doom paired up with the 412 Huwatt 100, which is a really nice cab actually, and it comes up with a 57 dynamic mic. Like I said, that's not my favorite mic to use. We'll take a listen to it though at the stock setting. So here's what the Doom amp sounds like with that 57 mic. I'll give it a little more volume again. So you got that little bit of edge of green going on there with that mic. So again, let's bring this up, maybe go to a 120 run ribbon and we'll pull it a few inches back. So I really like that. You could also even go to just like a 160 ribbon if you don't want it to be quite so dark. There's something I really like about the distortion quality of this amp. Let's crank it up to 10 on the drive. Something nice about that. And again, it's going to sound very different depending on the guitar you're using. I got my Fender Elite Telly here. It's going to have a very specific sound to it, but it's a fun guitar to play and it sounds so good with so many amp models. So that's my number 3 favorite, is the Line 6 Doom. Maybe a surprise to some, just because I like those distortion characteristics you get with it. At number 2, and this one will probably be a little less surprising, is the Placator Dirty model, which is a model of the Friedman BE100 amp that so many folks were asking for at whatever firmware this came into, a 2.7 maybe, I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But, you know, even got the name Placator because it finally placated all the folks asking for it. So, and it is a killer amp model. It's just such a beautiful distorted sound. And I was so excited when this came out. So here's the settings. One thing I always do with this though is I always swap out the stock cab, the 412 Cali V30. I'm not a fan of this one. I go to another stock cab. But this one comes in with the 160 ribbon mic, 3 inches back. Let's just listen to it with those settings. And again, let me just crank up the channel volume here. What I like to do with this is I like to go over to a greenback 25 with, let's say, a 160 ribbon mic. Sometimes even a 121 ribbon and pull that back a few inches. The nice thing about it is such a versatile amp. You know, you've got all these separate controls here for the HBE, the FAT, the C45, the saturation. If I turn that C45 off, I actually kind of like it with most of those off, but so versatile because I could turn the FAT control on. You know, there's the HBE. Or the saturation. That's never been my favorite. I keep those off normally, but there's a lot of gain on tap. If I crank the gain up. And I find the tone stack settings on that, the EQ settings are very usable range on them, and you know, really can help to make this amp sound even better. But that is definitely my number 2 amp, sometimes probably my number 1 depending on what I'm trying to do. But that's a great amp model that if you haven't checked out, which I'm sure most of you have, you really should. And last but not least, my number 1 favorite amp right now anyways, is the Matchstick Channel 2, which is a model of the matchless DC30 amp. Real classic amp, such an amazing amp. Obviously not a high gain amp. It's not gonna be anywhere up into the gain of something like the Placator Dirty that we just took a look at. But what we do have is the Matchstick Channel 2, which is also the Channel 1 and the Jump channel as well. In the Helix, and you know, we could use those in a preset and combine them, whatever. Really awesome stuff. 212 Match G25 is the cab it comes with. I love this cab. It comes stock right out of the gate with the 160 ribbon at 1.5 inches back, and I probably wouldn't even touch that. That's what this sounds like. And let's just crank this channel volume again. Go to the neck pickup. Really nice stuff on that. One thing you might do, it has a beautiful kind of sparkle to it that some people might feel gets a little edgy sometimes, but even going to like a 121 ribbon. pickup. You could even, if you're really adventurous, go to a 4038. Which I really, really love on that. But if we go back to say a 160 ribbon, come back to the drive, what happens on this is if we crank the drive up, there's something really nice in the upper end that cuts through a mix nicely with that. So I really love the overdrive of that, the ability for it to go from really clean to kind of a nice breakup. And even more of a lead tone. So really beautiful stuff. And again, obviously way more controls here we could tweak to our heart's content to get it to work with whatever guitar we're using and whatever we want it to sound like in the end. So that's my top 5. I hope you guys enjoyed that for whatever it's worth. Like I said, this could probably change tomorrow if I did it again. But those are my top 5 for today. And I really love those amp models. And honestly, if I was stuck with just using those 5, I think I could probably accomplish just about anything I ever needed to do with an array of different guitars and maybe even throwing some pedals in front of them. You know, it's going to give me everything I need right there. So I love those. So, you know, if those are amp models you've looked at, wonderful. You already know how great they are. If they aren't, and maybe you're constantly looking at different amp models on the Helix other than these, now maybe hopefully that'll inspire you to take a look at these and you'll come up with some great tones. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that was enjoyable for whatever it was worth. But I'll be back soon with some more content. Please like the video and share it if you don't mind. Subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification so you get notified when I put new content out, and I'll be back soon with hopefully what'll be enjoyable content. Lots of fun stuff coming up. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and ciao for now.